Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back again to another episode of As I Live and Grieve. It's great just having you out there, and I tell you time and time again how much you've actually helped me on my grief journey. I'll say it over and over again because I so appreciate every one of you. With me today, of course, you got it, another great guest. I have with me today Catherine Duncan. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, great to meet you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited about our conversation. But before we get started with that, I want to take just a minute and ask if you would introduce yourself to our listeners by just telling them a little bit about yourself. Who is Catherine Duncan?
Catherine Duncan, I'm an integrative spiritual consultant is my work. I for years worked as a chaplain, a hospice chaplain, also at our level 1 trauma hospitals. I'm an ordained minister, board certified chaplain, spiritual director, and just for 30 years, passionate about whole person healing and what that means. What does it mean to be alive right now? And I now have a private practice. I work with people emotionally, spiritually, and do quite a bit of public speaking. And I'm a new author. My book, Everyday Awakening launched a year ago.
Well, that was pretty quick. I know there's so much more to Catherine, and we'll kind of dig into some of that as we get going. First of all, when I hear the word spirituality, it's kind of a vague word for me, but I think it seems vague to me because it's so all-encompassing. Can you kind of clarify a little bit what spirituality means to you and how it might pertain to us as we grieve?
I really like the word spirituality. I think here's a definition that I resonate with. It just what gives you meaning versus I would even say the word religion. I think religion can be a loaded word for people. I think religion is more man-made doctrine, dogma, how you practice a tradition. But I think spirituality is really all-encompassing, inclusive about what in life really fills you up, gives you meaning, sense of peace, hope. That's how I would define spirituality.
I like that a lot, and that really resonates with me, especially when you use the phrase man-made dogma for religion. I think that sums that up perfectly. I was raised in an Episcopalian household, certainly, choir every Thursday night, church every Sunday, and in the evening on Sundays, it was youth group as I was growing up. It was very structured, but it has probably been the last I want to say 20 years of my life, that religion has made me feel kind of trapped, if you will, into a certain structure again. And I have explored more and more different modalities, different theories, different beliefs. And now I almost kind of like to say I'm an experiencer because I've experienced some shamanic rituals, some Buddhist rituals, and I'm really enjoying that exploration. I find that has really helped me in my grief journey because, as you say, the things that give meaning to me, I have found more and more of those little bits and pieces, if you will. Now, I'm sure you in your life have had some grief or have some grief. And I have said time and time again, I have 4 major losses in my life. I've lost both parents. I lost an infant son who was just less than 24 hours old. And I have more recently lost my husband. That's been 6.5 years ago. But in the last year, there have been probably half a dozen friends because I'm now getting to that age where all these diseases are coming up and everything. And I find grief is something that when I used to pertain it to the podcast, now it's just part of my everyday life now. Somebody else is nearing death or dying and we're, rushing off to see them and everything. Sometimes I forget my spirituality. How can I kind of make it a constant presence? Is there a way?
I think what you just shared about grief, and there's a lot of grief in the world. I think there's a lot of chaos in the world. There's a lot of evil in the world. And how can you be with life? I mean, it's holding all of life, the good, the bad, the joy, the sorrow. I mean, that is what it means to be fully alive, being with life. And it takes courage and it takes strength and it takes, I think, an awareness of what does it mean to just be present versus living. And I talk a lot about this in my new book, Everyday Awakening, of just not letting our mind run us, not living on autopilot, but really being conscious of creating moments of just coming back to the moment, coming back into our body, breathing into this moment. Because in this moment, it's like we're okay. It's okay in this moment. Our mind creates so much suffering, or just our mind, our thoughts alone. We can turn on the stress response by our thought alone. So it just goes back to the question of, how are you living your life every day, and how can you find and cultivate and grow some peace and ease? It really does take some consciousness and daily choice and practice.
Daily choice and practice. We really can't avoid the stress in our lives. So we have to learn somehow to very quickly recognize it for what it is my theory, my opinion. Very quickly recognize it for what it is, and then try to divert ourselves before we kind of let it consume us. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I would say, and right now, today, we just had elections a week ago.
Oh, gosh.
A lot of people. Just in the last week, I bet I've had 10, 12 clients. I have a private practice who've expressed worry, fear, turmoil.
Yes.
And a thought to share about stress and about the turmoil of the world, the constant chaos of the world is, what are you tuning into? The external world, there is a lot of upheaval and there's a lot of what we say dysregulation, but it takes choice to be like, okay, even though the external world is this, I'm going to maintain a grounding and a balance and a regulation and find my grounding and the peace within and cultivate that amidst whatever's happening outside of us. It really does take some mindful practice to create that calmness, that stillness, that regulating our nervous system. And if we live day to day dealing with, in a place of fear, anxious, worry, those are the lowest vibrational energies our bodies can hold. And if we stay in that place, we get dysregulated. It's not good for us physically, emotionally, spiritually. So even just knowing, where am I? And am I living in my mind that's causing me so much unease? Or can I drop into my body and just be here right now in just this moment and figure out for each one listening, what for you can help you create some sense of stillness, some presence, some peace. It does take some practice to do that.
To me, it almost sounds like sometimes we just need to go to that deserted island somewhere where there are no outside influences, that, we can just be with ourselves. But of course, that's not practical for most of us. Do you have any tips? Anything that's a little more generalized, perhaps, that most people could try?
Yep. And I don't think, even though, yes, it'd be ideal, go on a trip, go to some resort island, but we don't need to. We can create that stillness if we want right now. My book, Everyday Awakening, has 42 exercises in it.
Oh,
back to the moment, feeling more love in your heart, going with the flow, growing love in your heart. I mean, so in the moment right now, even while I'm talking, to bring us into the moment, can you feel your feet on the floor? Your feet right now, just can you feel your feet, your toes, whatever's there, drop down into your feet. Moves us out of our busy mind into our body, into our feet, brings us into the moment. We can do that with our breath, breathing in, even putting your hand on your lower abdomen and breathing in. Our lower abdomen normally expands on the in-breath and recedes on the out-breath. Again, brings us out of our busy mind into just this moment. I mean, those are just a couple practices, and there's many.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like most listeners are going to have to go out and buy your book. I know I'm going to have to go buy your book, which I should have done by now. I just hadn't gotten around to it. These exercises almost sound like some of the cognitive behavior exercises that they might give to someone maybe who suffers from panic attacks. Then when you feel that attack coming on, you think about your senses. What can you see? What can you feel? What things like that. At what point should we be doing these exercises? Do we do them routinely throughout the day?
I definitely would agree that it has some flavoring of, cognitive behavioral therapy, neuroscience.
Sure.
Here's just basic research that is fascinating from the 70s. Dr. Herbert Benson, Harvard professor, coined the term, the relaxation response. 5 minutes of breathing or meditating physiologically calms our nervous system, helps us regulate our body, lowers our blood pressure, our heart rate, our cortisol level. So again, choices. I would recommend everyone listening, what do you do on a daily basis? What brings you some sense of peace and ease? Do you have a morning ritual? Do you have a breath practice or a meditation practice? Or do you walk? Do you get out in nature? Do you do art? There's so many different ways to just help cultivate being here now in the present moment to feel and some peace and some ease. And these are practices that I do every single day. They're just habit.
Mm-hmm. You have made them part of your routine then.
100%. Yeah, for years. Even just having a breath or meditation practice, start with a minute. Could you build up to 5 minutes? If you actually start doing a regular breath or meditation practice, you'll notice that your body starts craving that stillness, that silence, that breathing room. Yeah, it's really powerful.
Okay. Is there a time of day that's better? Is it better to do it in the morning to start your day or in the evening before you go to bed?
I would say all the above, whatever helps you. So, for example, I have a morning ritual practice I do. It's a gratitude practice. So when I wake up in the morning, before I get out of bed, I just have a few minutes of thinking about, here I am. I'm alive. I have family. I have a bed to sleep in. So much to be grateful for. I think about it, but then I feel that energy, love, thankfulness, gratitude, highest vibrational energies our bodies can hold. I feel that for a few minutes, and then I have a few minutes of prayer. I see the flow of my day, and then I get out of bed. Here's the opposite. You wake up, you grab your phone, you have 4 appointments, whatever, you go, go, go. You're already in a stress response before you get out.
That's me. That's me. True confessions here. And my mind is going the minute my eyes pop open in the morning. My mind is going about what I've got to do for the day.
Yeah. So even just a suggestion, because some practice I've done for many years, and this comes out of, I'm a childhood cancer survivor. I came very close to dying as a child. I had a near-death experience in my 30s. I've faced my own death. I've been with thousands of people as they've died as a chaplain. I really get and understand what it means to be alive right now and feeling into the preciousness of life right now. But even starting when you open your eyes, if you know that your mind already starts running, a suggestion, try tomorrow morning when you open your eyes, just like, okay, before my mind starts taking off, I'm going to breathe for a moment. I'm going to think about, here I am, I'm alive. I have, if you can think of maybe some things you could be grateful for, think it, feel it. I promise it. Research sets the tone for your day.
Okay, I will make it a point to do that in the morning. I do have many, many things in my life to be grateful for. I don't kind of compress them all into one group and say, oh, I'm thankful for this. I don't think I've ever done that. But as those things maybe cross my path during the day, they certainly make me smile, and I have the gratitude then. So maybe that means I'll get a double dose of it during the day. I don't know. And likewise, now at night, I had difficulty falling asleep because I can't shut my mind down. So is that also a good time to do something like that?
That would be a great practice. Another one, a few others to quickly suggest. I love doing what's called a self-soothing practice, just putting your hands over your chest and feeling the warmth of your hands As you breathe in, breathe out, it starts to calm your body. And you could add a loving kindness phrase, may I be at peace, or give me peace, and just breathe. Starts to calm our body. I love that. Here's what I do if I wake up in the night and all of a sudden, for some reason, I can't sleep. My favorite go-to breath exercise is breathing in, just imagining peace coming through my body from the top of my head, neck, shoulders, all the way down through my feet, and breathing out stress, worry, fear. I even see it like gray smoke leaving my body. So breathing in peace, breathing out stress. And every time it helps me just like go back to sleep quickly.
That's interesting. Those are some great tips. Okay. I'd like to kind of digress a little bit into your work as a hospice chaplain. As you talked with people that were in the last hours, moments, days of their lives, was there any type of a common thread about regrets that people may have had?
Interesting. Over weeks I was with thousands of people at end of life as a chaplain, a hospice chaplain. There would be some regrets or need for forgiveness that would typically come up where we would talk through it, work through it to release it, to let it go. I would say a couple really notable things I noticed was many people the last days before they died, there was just a dropping away of maybe external identification and just a realizing, wow, this is it to be alive. And a sense of love, that was the number one theme I heard. Love is all that mattered. Love of those around them, love of family, and also coupled with people just like, getting a sense of this is life, the preciousness of life, and then they would die. And this was truly the impetus of writing my book, Everyday Awakening. And the message is you don't have to wait till you're at the end of you're in crisis or upheaval. You can choose right now. And a big takeaway message was love, just seeing patients with just radiant love all around them. Nothing else mattered. And I do think that we're here on this earth to learn to love. And it starts with first loving ourselves, but love is just powerful, a healing balm in life.
Mm-hmm. And in your experience, now you were a hospice chaplain, but certainly you saw other people outside of hospice. I'm very familiar with hospice. I've worked at our local comfort care homes in a number of different roles and everything. So I'm very familiar with it. I don't know if many of our listeners are or not. But other than hospice, when you were with people who were dying, could you tell the difference, so to speak? Because I know hospice has an excellent philosophy about supporting the person who's dying as well as the family. Could you see a difference in the families and the person dying who did not experience hospice as compared to those who did?
Interesting question. I've had 5 family members die, so I've had to share most of them, the 5 family members. Gosh, in fact, all of them. No, one died in the hospital. The rest died in hospice. I've seen a difference between dying in the hospital in the emergency room versus dying in hospice. I would say the norm I experienced with patients in hospice is people really did come and drop into a place of peace before they died. Maybe it wasn't until a day or two before they died, but they did. That was the norm. It was unusual in hospice for someone not to find some sense of peace before they died. Now it's different when you die in a hospital suddenly and there's a traumatic event. I was a chaplain at our level 1 trauma hospital, and people would come in, a sudden accident, they'd be alert, and then 2 hours later they'd be gone. And that is a whole different experience. Dying that way, it's unexpected. The peace is not quite what you would see, for example, in hospice.
Yeah, and maybe that wasn't even a fair question on my part, because certainly it's difficult to compare when someone's on hospice. Usually there's a certain criteria as far as time, anticipated length of time before they die, as opposed to someone that's been in a traumatic accident or something. So apologies maybe for the unfair question. But I think what I wanted to point out to people was that with hospice, you often, if not always, do find that sense of peace in people as they die or that are about to die. They've made peace with what's going to happen. They have, hopefully by that time, if they've had some issues that were not quite resolved, they've been able to resolve them or at least make plans for that to happen and everything. So kind of in an awkward way, I guess, I was trying to point out one of what I think is the most rewarding things about hospice is that people seem to die a little more at peace and are a little more prepared for it and ready for it when it does happen, including the families. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean at all that the families just say, okay, it's over, and they walk away. They don't. Even when you know that death is coming, it is still difficult when it happens. And I remember with my husband, he had a brain tumor. We had 8 months from the time he was diagnosed until the day he died. I had all that time to be ready, to be prepared. Yet when the day came, there was a momentary sense of relief that finally we had reached that point where his life had ended and there was no more suffering. I didn't have to make 45-minute one-way commutes to go visit him and go back home every day, only to figure out how to change the filter in the furnace. I didn't have to go through that. So there was that momentary sense of relief. But I have to say, I think it was as devastating as anything could be, and was certainly, of all my losses, was the most difficult. And he was on hospice, but he was only on hospice for about 5 days, I think. He had done pretty well and then took a sudden turn. So, but there is that sense of peace with hospice, and I find it an amazing philosophy, an amazing modality, if in fact it's available and people can take advantage of it. I think it's a wonderful thing.
I'd love to say that, yeah, there's peace and finality. And my heart starts to you hearing that. I lost a brother to a brain tumor, and he fought in an operable brain tumor for 10 years, traveled across the country, every clinical trial till he ran out of options. And so we had time to prepare on some level, but even when it finally happened, it's shocking. It's stunning.
It is.
And grief is complicated. I'll share with you one gleaning, though, being with so many people at end of life. Here's 2 things I witnessed. We do not die alone.
Mm-hmm.
I witnessed patients talking to deceased loved ones, angels, spirits. I'm a mystic. I'm an intuitive. I would see some of this as well. And death is not an end. I was with people a day, 2 days, few days, within a week, would come back in the middle of the night, wake me up. I'd see their spirit right above me for a moment.
Wow.
Nodding, and then be gone. So death is not an end. We transform.
Yes, we do. And that's also something that that was where I think with the religion I was brought up in, I started to really feel structured and torn. I had some guests on the podcast. We talked about signs from beyond and things like that. And I was convinced I was getting signs from Tom, my husband.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I had that doctrine that I had grown up with that would have said, no, you don't. So I started exploring, and that's kind of when I started checking into other things and even finally understood that our bodies are just energy. That was something else that I had never really grasped. And now I do. And I'm still learning too. I'm still learning a lot, in fact.
And I would say you can't put God, spirit world, you can't put it in a box. And I'm an ordained minister with United Church of Christ and studying with a master's in divinity, an extensive range of Christianity, from fundamentalist, really rigid, all the way to really liberal. And my suggestion is, can you just be open?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when I open my mind and everything like that, there are still awkward moments. Like, I've been asked to participate in some, again, shamanic rituals, and I have to say there are times I feel pretty awkward about it. And I've also had hypnosis done. I wanted to do some past life regression. I wanted to try that. I like to say now I'm an experiencer. I like to experience some of these things, and I just felt I was being a phony because I didn't necessarily feel when they would say, you see this, and I don't see anything. It's just black, But, yet I would try to give into it and try to work with it and everything. And it's when you start to explore spirituality, boy, you open up an incredible world. You really do.
Exciting.
Do.
Yeah. I mean, a red flag to me is when someone says, this is how you open, or this is how you pray, or this is the way. We're many paths, and language is limiting.
Yep. Yep. Well said. Well said. Well, sadly, the time is winding down for us. These conversations always go so quickly, and there's always so much more I know to be said. But before I actually start my wrap up for everyone, I will turn the microphone over to you and let you speak directly to our listeners. Be sure to tell them a little bit more about your book, where they can get it, and anything else you'd like them to know. The floor is yours.
Great. My book is called Everyday Awakening: 5 Practices for Living Fully, Feeling Deeply, Coming into Your Heart and Soul. And the book is all about how are we choosing to awaken right now. And when I say awakening, opening into our heart, our soul, the oneness with God, the spirit, the universal energy, living from that place. And it is a conscious choice and a conscious practice. And I would just invite the reader to, everyone hearing us right now, where are you? Are you opening and growing? Are you letting your life live you, or are you living your life? And my book, Everyday Awakening, is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's all over, some Barnes & Nobles throughout the country. And you can go to my website, everydayawakening.com. I'm all over social media as Catherine Duncan with a C, Catherine Duncan. And I put up, little tidbits of wisdom and variety of interviews, exercises. So yeah. And send me a message if you have a question, but really lovely to meet you tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. It was my pleasure indeed. Again, it is so much around spirituality, and I want our listeners to know that this podcast may be about grief, but remember too, that grief isn't just about losing someone through death. We have grief every day in our lives, whether it's election results, not having the country we thought we might have, not knowing what's coming. It could be not getting a job you wanted. It could be losing a job you've had and loved. It could be retiring sometimes can induce grief in people. And certainly it can be divorce. It can be ending relationships, everything like that. Grief is around us all the time. And I dare you to find anyone who got through that pandemic without grieving. In fact, many are still grieving from the pandemic. So this book that Catherine has written, Everyday Awakening, sounds like not only it would be a great read for everyone, but would also be a great gift for someone. Because what do you think? How do you think you might feel if you gave someone a book and then found out a year later that had given them the answer to questions they had been wondering for decades? How would that make you feel? That would be a very, very special gift indeed. So consider it. I feel and have felt all my life that books are a great gift, one of the greatest gifts you can give anyone, whether it's for the holidays, birthdays, or even a just because. And when you grieve, often you get a lot of support initially, and then there's a period of time that you suddenly feel everyone has left you, that no one understands. You can't talk about it anymore. And if you think about it, you must be abnormal. Well, if you've been listening to these episodes, and I know many of you have, you know that's not true now. But it doesn't stop those feelings from trying to creep in. So I'm going to wrap up now, but say one more time, check out Catherine's book, Everyday Awakening. Think about it as a gift. Catherine, thanks so much for being with me today. I truly appreciate everything you've said, and I'm going to try that practice tomorrow morning.
Sounds good.
Being grateful. And maybe I'll try the other one tonight before I go to sleep, putting hands over my heart, because I need to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
I really need to slow down and try to live more in the moment. I can go through my day thinking I'm doing great, but when faced with conversation like what we just had, I find out, no, I'm probably not doing as well as I think I'm doing. So listeners, listeners, take care of yourselves out there too. Practice practice your own spirituality. And if you're really confused and confuddled about what that might be, check out Catherine's website and buy her book. And definitely come back again next week as we all continue to live and grieve.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asiliveandgrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.